Welcome into the Fountain of Youth live stream, the show before the show, the pregame show, however you want to say it. I am Matt Bernier. We are getting ready to go live on FanDuel TV in about 30 minutes time, but this is a kind of a precursor. It's not just myself. Larry Coleman is at our FanDuel TV set about, I don't know, call it 25 yards to my right. Larry, can you hear me okay?
I hear you just fine, Matt. It's a beautiful day for racing. Excited about the Fountain of Youth later on today, and let's have some fun.
Before we get into the race, we have to welcome the third member of our team, Andy Biancone. She is on the backside. She's standing by with a pretty important character in this race later on today, Andy.
Yes, Matt, we are here with Dornock. We're in receiving barn B here on the backside of Gulfstream Park. So horses stabled at Palmetto's shipped down to the receiving barn morning of the race. And Dornock is standing with his groom, Michael. He's actually been pretty riled up, for the flag. A filly who was running on the card earlier in the day has been walking around, and he's got a big crush on her, screaming at her the whole time.
There he goes.
But, he's making his presence known. He looks amazing. He's a beautiful, beautiful horse. Got some very good size to him. Hopefully he settles down, but obviously you see his groom, Michael, just trying to kind of keep his attention and keep him relaxed.
He's got plenty of time to get his mind on business, but we are going to need to focus at some point on the big race and the task at hand later on this afternoon, race number 14, right around 6:15. It's going to be the Coolmore Fountain of Youth. And if you're just joining us or you're just checking things out, we've had a number of changes to this race. You can take a look right now on screen. This is the road to the Kentucky Derby coming out of South Florida. And with the changes that we've had here today, the 3 Victory Avenue has been withdrawn. The 6 Merit he ran yesterday, and probably the most noteworthy change, the 8 Locked, who figured to be the favorite come post time. He is not going to run. Trainer Todd Pletcher mentioned that they galloped him this morning up at Palm Beach, and he just did not seem to like the way he was moving, so he's going to bypass this spot. And it's really disappointing, Larry, because not only does it take away from the race, but now, if you're a fan of Locked, they are way up against it from a time standpoint to get into the Derby.
That is for sure. And if you were a fan of betting against Lock today, you really lost any chance of getting any value because it's down to basically Dornock and Speakeasy as the 2 favorites in this race.
Andy, as far as the race itself is concerned now with those defections, you're standing by with Dornock. I initially thought the inside 3 horses would all be the speed, Speakeasy, Ladom Bro, and Victory Avenue. Now you take Victory Avenue out of that. I wonder if Dornock's a little bit closer now to the front end today.
Absolutely. I mean, Dornock flashed his speed in the Remsen. He kind of gate to wire them, took pressure all the way around. He set fast fractions going 1 1/8. So I definitely think we'll see him forwardly placed today.
We're taking a look at the Remsen right now, and I had a good conversation with a very good gambler, a big contest player, Chris Larmy, last night about this race particularly. And yes, Dornock was down on a gold rail at Aqueduct that day. I don't think anybody would dispute that. But no one has talked about the fact that the pace of that race completely melted down. And he wasn't just finding it at the end. He actually finished his final 1/8 of a mile faster than Sierra Leone did. So I don't know. I liked him coming into the day today. Now, obviously, all value is gone. He's going to be pushing even money in a spot like this. But I think he's the real deal. And even if this is nothing more than a stepping stone, I think he's a major player tonight.
I don't think you can say what you want about a golden rail. How much does it take for a horse to pick himself up and come back like that? That is a professional racehorse. I was so impressed by the fact that he was able to do that against a really good horse in Sierra Leone, and we found out how good he is later. You have to love what Dornock did and what a racehorse he is.
Andy, you've seen a few different Derby preps so far. You've seen the Holy Bull. Last weekend, you saw the Rebel. Obviously, we'll see the big one here later on this afternoon. In your mind so far, who have you been most impressed by?
Most impressed by a horse not in any of the who didn't run on any of the Derby Trail races, and that was Conquest Warrior, who you've been on the Conquest Warrior bandwagon, Matt. Well, I jumped right on it after seeing the performance yesterday, but Dornock, that effort in the Remsen, Larry isn't kidding. for him, forget the whole rail bias thing. The fact that that horse looked beat, came back, and I love the way he galloped out with his ears pricked. So happy to have gotten by the other horse. That is a horse who truly understands the meaning of the game, the meaning of competition, who loves what he's doing. You can see him feeling good and happy here, and physically has the makings of a good racehorse, no doubt. We know he's bred for it. He's proven himself so far. Dornoch is to be taken seriously.
Yeah, Andy, you mentioned Conquest Warrior. He was super impressive here yesterday, winning that allowance for Chip McGahee. I wonder now, obviously in hindsight, it's 2020. I wonder if they're kicking themselves a little bit because of all the defections in this race here today, but now all their eggs are in the Florida Derby basket. As much as I like him and I liked the race yesterday, it didn't come back all that fast as far as buyers are concerned. He only earned an 84. I'm not too worried about that. I like what I saw. If you're looking for a horse that is fast, and arguably the fastest 3-year-old that we've seen so far this year, it's Speakeasy. He's going to run here later on this afternoon. This was his debut performance here. This was on January the 27th. He beats Victory Avenue, who again, unfortunately won't run later on. But a 100 buyer here, Larry. If this horse can stretch out successfully to 2 turns, he's a handful today.
All we heard all week long was the fact that Victory Avenue was the second coming. And all of a sudden, here comes Speakeasy at 8-1 for Todd Pletcher, first time out, and he runs right by Victory Avenue. It was a spectacular effort. They ran 7 furlongs in sub 122. It was just an amazing race to start his career. So you have to be excited about Speakeasy coming into today's race, especially the way the race sets up with that move into that first turn in the short stretch. I think Speakeasy's at an advantage for sure.
If you have any questions, comments, concerns, feel free to join this conversation. We'll be here for about the next 10 minutes. You can find us on the TVG Facebook page, TVG_racing on YouTube. You can also watch over on Twitter or X, whatever we call it these days. Andy is a horsewoman. Before we move on,
I still call it Twitter.
I do too. Before we move on to the next horse, as a horsewoman, any concerns about going 2 turns against winners for the first time with Speakeasy?
Obviously, that's a tall task, but he's bred to handle the distance. Okay, he's high constitution. I think the way he won that day, he's going to be able to hopefully go a bit slower than he did on debut. So I don't think the stretch out is an issue at all. The race fell apart, so I understand why he's in here, and he certainly has a big shot.
I think most people would look at the Holy Bull and say the big shocker was the fact that Fierceness not only didn't win, but he didn't finish second. Earlier on that day, a horse upset the Swale in Frankie's Empire. He's coming back here today. He won this race at a giant number, coming up on the far outside, first time going out from Michael Yates' mark. Interestingly enough, I believe Michael Yates and the owner until this day in this race, and this horse goes off and wins by more than 3 lengths with an 81 buyer. He's also stretching out to 2 turns here locally. Larry, any kind of an upset chance?
I just think he's maybe a level below these horses. I mean, that was a nice effort for sure by Frankie's Empire. And there's always that chance of an upset, but I'm going to stick with the favorites in this race, Dornoch and Speakeasy, from what I've seen so far.
Andy, what do you think about Frankie's Empire stretching out?
I agree. I thought that was an okay effort, but just coming down to the line, I kind of felt like he was just hanging on. It wasn't like he was aggressively going to the wire, like powering home. I thought Dornoch's effort in the Remsen was a bigger testament to this horse's ability. So he's definitely the standout. And it's crazy because, you see these horses, the replays, the names on the PPs, everything. I really only feel super confident when I see a horse. Basically, like Conquest Warrior was so standout physically against the group he ran against yesterday. And looking at Dornoch, I've seen him at Palmetto's training, but this is the first time I've really stood next to him and seen him on the ground level. And he is fabulous. Just so much scope, so much depth. He's got the size of the makings of a good Derby horse.
Talk about Frankie's Empire being a bit of an upset candidate in this spot. How about the 4 Real Macho? This is a horse that most recently pulled off a pretty big upset back on February the 3rd. This is a race in which Born Noble was the heavy favorite for Todd Pletcher. He went out there. The pace was wicked. Barrett was in this race as well. I think the interior quarter is really the thing that was the undoing of Born Noble. You also see Born Noble down on the inside right now. He'll take a bit of an awkward step in deep stretch. Meanwhile, Real Macho, Larry, he's warming up. He's still about 5 out of it, but he's eventually going to get up in the shadow of the wire from Rohan Crichton. He stretches back to 2 turns. He hasn't really done anything wrong. I just think he's got to find a lot here today to be competitive.
Yeah, he's just going to have to pick up his game. This was a nice effort for sure, but the race kind of, as you said, fell apart with all that pace early on in the race. It was due to set up for a closer. Real Macho, to his credit, was the only one doing that. He really was rolling at the end of this race, and he's able to get to Born Noble, who kind of got the staggers, as you can see, coming down to the wire. Not an impressive effort by the eye to me compared to the other efforts that we've seen from the other horses in this race. So that would be a big step up to get him to win.
A bit on the grindy side, and maybe if this race falls apart later on this afternoon,
Born Noble was just, he was done.
And also, Born Noble, for what it's worth, I believe he was supposed to run in the allowance yesterday, and they didn't even enter him because something went a little bit amiss. So he's going to miss a little bit of time. Hopefully, we see him again as we get closer and closer to the Florida Derby, or these final round of Derby preps. Here is a question from Shane Dagenhart over from Facebook. Thoughts on just FYI's return earlier today, or later today, I should say. That's going to be in the Devona Dale. Personally, I'm going to take a shot against both her and the Fletcher horse in there. I think they are clearly the fastest on paper, Andy, but I was so impressed last year's 2-year-old into Champagne's debut for Eva Wilson. And then she came back here in the Glitter Room, and it was a sloppy track. She took mud in her face, and she still able to overcome it. She's slow on almost any figure you use, but I'm going to give her a shot today in 5 or 6 minutes.
I agree with you, Matt. I think anything could kind of happen. The Fletcher filly, as you said to me earlier in the week, has kind of had everything go her way this far. And just FYI, the turn back to the 1-turn mile could be interesting. She certainly has the speed to accomplish that, but seeing her having routed in the Breeders' Cup juvenile fillies, it's going to be interesting, and the layoff, although Bill Mott has been doing super well statistically with horses coming off a long layoff, so she could be ready. It's all gonna come down to what they look like in the paddock for me.
Larry, for or against just FYI returning today?
I'm against. I'm the Leslie's Rope guy, based on the fact that not only has she been running a lot faster numbers-wise, but on top of that, the race that she won last time, she beat Gunsong, and that horse came back and won easily in her next start. I just think just FYI has done everything right, but hasn't done it fast. So I want to see a performance where she can put up a number in addition to getting a championship. She was obviously the deserved champion 2-year-old filly, no doubt about it, but I just don't like her today.
The other thing you always have to keep in mind, there's no guarantee that 2-year-olds, specifically fillies, are going to carry that form over from 2 to 3. So we'll see what we get. Just FYI, she'll make her 3-year-old debut later on this afternoon in the Devona Dale. I know we've only been on for about 12 minutes. Larry and I need to get wired up over on the set. We have full on-site coverage here at Gulfstream Park this afternoon. Todd Schrupp, Andy Biancone, myself, Caitlin Radar, Larry Colmus. We'll bring you the 14-race program, wrapping up with the Coolmore Fountain of Youth that goes as race number 14 with Dornoch making his 3-year-old debut. And if you want to wager on any of these races via the FanDuel Racing app or racing.fanduel.com, we have no sweat win bets being offered up to $10 coming back your way. All the details at racing.fanduel.com or again over in the FanDuel Racing app. Hopefully we get to do more of these in the future. Apologies that it was so brief, and apologies for the wind, but a little bit breezy here in South Florida. I guess parting thoughts, Andy, we'll start with you.
Parting thoughts. I like what I'm seeing from Dornoch. He seems to be settling down. When he was screaming and everything earlier, I assume he had just shipped in because he's running late. So he's not sweating. Good body language. Obviously very alert. He knows he's back at the races, and he looks excited to be back at the races. So all good signs from Dornoch. He's going to be my top selection in the Fountain of Youth.
Larry, last shout.
I'm going with Andy. I'm going with Dornoch, too. I think he's going to be ultra tough in this race, and I love his attitude. He seems like a cool dude, too.
Clean sweep for Dornoch. We'll find out if he delivers in his 3-year-old debut for the Danny Gargan barn. He's got to get his eyes off the ladies, but that's another story. Good news is...
By the way, he's Mage's brother. We didn't mention that.
Yeah, he happens to be the full brother to last year's Kentucky Derby winner, Mage. So,
and he looks nothing like Mage, by the way. He's actually a lot more size than Mage, which is a good sign.
All right. We'll see what he does here this afternoon. Again, goes out for Danny Gargan's barn. Dornoch will be the horse to beat. Maybe Speakeasy can spring a mild upset in the 14th and final here on Fountain of Youth Saturday. We're done. Hopefully, again, we'll do this again soon. Join us over on FanDuel TV. We'll be up in about, 15 minutes.